Welcome to my Wijk aan Zee round 4 report. Today I'd like to just go through one game, and that's the game between Loek van Wely from Netherlands and Magnus Carlsen. Now, of course, Carlsen has not had the best start. 2 draws followed by a loss yesterday. So could he recover? Well, looking at this position after 16 moves, van Wely with white has a pleasant position. He played G3, he played D4 and G3 fianchetto, and Carlsen went in for, well, this Grunfeld move D5 against the fianchetto. And this is pleasant for white. The difference between the two positions basically is that van Wely has brought his queen out, enabling him to bring his rooks into the middle of the board on these 2 open files, whereas Carlsen's queen is still stuck on the back rank, so the rooks haven't been able to join in the game, and white is very well developed. And as ever, when you play a fianchetto, there are no weaknesses around white's king. This is an extremely difficult position for black to play, and there's even a threat to play the knight in D5. So what should black play here? Well, one possibility is to play this, to take on F3 and play the knight into D4. First glance it looks quite attractive, and obviously 2 pieces are attacked here. So rook takes D4 is necessary. But now we can see that white actually really has a very dangerous position here. The knight uncovers a threat to black's queen, and the bishop is attacked. And if queen here, well, you can play rook d1, that's interesting, but maybe even better is to play this move e5, preventing the bishop retreating, opening up the bishop, and then threatening rook d1. White has tremendous compensation, but it's a tempting move. Bishop takes f3. So what did Carlsen do? Well, he played queen e6. Not a bad move. Van Wely took, and now bishop takes e6 is possible. I think white is still slightly better here. Symmetrical pawn structure. I mean, maybe black can hold this position, but it's still not easy. I mean, one thing is certain, black has 0 winning chances in this kind of position. But after van Wely took the queen, Carlsen now played pawn takes queen. Now, this is an extraordinary move. It looks absolutely horrible at first glance because these pawns are so ugly. Doubled, split, isolated, whatever you like, however you'd like to describe them. Not pretty. But there's method in his madness. We can see that straight away there are some kind of threats to play e5 to open up the f-file and to win this piece on f3. Now van Wely defended against this with e5. And again, a very interesting moment in the game, because black has a few possibilities here that look, well, reasonable. For example, knight c4, attacking 2 pawns. But probably best for white now is to play here. And in this position, just to give this pawn, and white has reasonable compensation for a pawn, but black could certainly play in this way. What's another possibility? Well, you could play bishop takes, and, well, g5 isn't working here. Of course, we'd like white to take and then take this bishop, but white can play bishop takes c6 and he's okay in that position. But black could take that pawn off. But here, this is probably also okay for white. There's no real harm done there, and black even has to be a little bit careful. So lots of tempting continuations. But Carlsen, after some thought, played knight d5. It's a very unusual move at first glance, actually. Knight c4 looks far more natural and certainly is okay. But it's such a clever move. Now, this does not give black the advantage, but Carlsen is so good at complicating a position to make life difficult for his opponent. Of course, this knight has to be exchanged. The bishop is attacked. Now, first of all, the tactics are quite tricky here. Let's have a look at rook takes d5. Now, in this case, black can exchange and play g5, and that wins material. So rook takes d5, not good. Well, what about h3? Can play this, and there's a threat to play bishop takes d5 check, so g5 doesn't work. But after e6, I think black has a kind of positional advantage here, because the pawns are so solid in the middle. This pawn here is a little bit weak on e5, and there's potential pressure on the f-file. So black has some chances for the advantage there. What about rook d3 to protect this? Well, again, I think positionally black stands quite well in that situation. So Van Wely played creatively. He played knight g5, and I think it's a good move. So the idea is that if bishop takes rook, white plays bishop takes pawn check, and then recaptures the bishop. And here I'm sure that white has sufficient compensation for the exchange. I mean, there's straight away a threat to play knight f7. There's also the possibility to play knight e6 after, for example, after h6. Well, knight f7 can be met by king h7 there, but knight e6, the rook can move, but I think white has sufficient compensation here in this position. The knight and the bishop are very strong indeed. So instead of just grabbing material, Carlsen plays e6. It's a clever move. So again, we have these nice pawns, and the pawn on e6 is defended by the bishop, and the rook is threatened, and we want to play h6 as well to drive the knight away. So white has to play f3, and well, if bishop g4, then I think we can just play, if bishop f5, then I think g4 is a good move. Should be good. Yeah, looks okay to me. So h6, played very quickly by Carlsen. So this is a forcing move, forcing this exchange of pawns. So now the position has changed again. I should say that Van Wely was in time pressure by this stage. And this is a difficult position to play with little time. Bishop f4 played, and the knight came back. So material is actually even at the moment. But Van Wely has to deal with these two central pawns. He has two bishops, but at the moment, well, that bishop on g2 is striking against the pawn on d5. And here, well, I don't really understand this next move. g5 was played. Okay, from a positional point of view, I understand it, because you want to try and give the bishop a diagonal. But Carlsen simply took the pawn on b2. Van Wely should have played b3, but still, this is a double-edged position. I think probably white is okay, but with these two centre pawns, black always has some kind of dynamic chances. But instead, g5, and now simply bishop takes b2, and now black is definitely better. And the idea is simply to try to roll these pawns down the board. Of course, the rook comes to the middle to support the pawn on d5. Rook f7 defends the pawn on b7. Rook e8 defends this pawn. And now the pawns start rolling forward. If bishop d2, the bishop drops back, and then the pawns are ready to advance down the board. So Van Wely tried rook b5. You notice there's a pin here, but that was a strong move, just getting out of the pin. And if the bishop comes back, then rook f2, and the rook is breaking through to the second rank, and that's horrible for white. So Van Wely played bishop e6, but this is hopeless. So white gets some material back, but with this material balance, knight and bishop against rook, and importantly, two passed pawns, Carlsen is simply winning this position. And it didn't take him much longer. Let's just go through the final moves of the game, but it's not too complicated. So this knight is swinging around to support that pawn on f2, and the game finished like this. So basically white can't touch these minor pieces. And here's a very nice final move. Knight to h2. Threatening f1. So yeah, rook takes bishop, f1, queen. And if king takes knight, then bishop e5 is an absolute killer, and black wins. So Magnus Carlsen now has 2 out of 4, and he's back in the race. I should say, I mean, today was an extraordinary round. Vasily Ivanchuk won again. He defeated Maxime Vacher-Legrave. So Ivanchuk is out on his own in the lead with 3.5 out of 4. Caruana drew with So today, an interesting game. He has 3. Ding defeated Rajabov, a very nice King's Indian. So Ding has 3 as well. Wojciech and So on 2.5. Wojciech drew with Aronian. Giri drew with Ho Ifan. And Saric beat Jabava in an absolutely bonkers game. Jabava just went completely nutty, but Saric managed to keep his cool and win. So, yeah, Ivanchuk, 45 years old. Could he be enjoying an Indian summer? Let's see if he can hold out. Tomorrow is a rest day. Round 5 is on Thursday. Do join me then.